Okay. Yes, he says. Beautiful. Fantastic. So, looks like we'll even have a recording afterwards to share out to everyone else, which I know has been a constant request on both Telegram and Discord. So, recordings of this week's office meeting to go out soon. I did want to start this week's office hours with a discussion of the PIP-9 Consensus Rule Change in the discourse, which is at forum.pocket.network. It includes a couple of major changes that I think are going to affect a lot of folks, especially node runners, and maybe the most important one of those being the non-custodial operator address addition, which is pretty exciting to everyone who's like, wait, I have to send all of my tokens to someone else. So should I lead in with that, or Alberto, Shane, one of y'all want to run an overview of that? I mean, I'll let y'all decide amongst yourselves. We had Andrew on there, that'd be great, but he's not here, I don't see. Let's see. Okay. Well, fair enough. Well, let's start with, at the very least, talking about what the structure of that PIP is. The first and I think most exciting one to everyone in general is the non-custodial operator address. That private key is essentially going to allow you to assign your tokens to someone as an operator while maintaining ownership of those tokens. I know that's present in some other blockchains and has been talked about a bunch from a staking perspective. However, I think that there's multiple dimensions to this, and not the least of which is what are the tax implications of that, since there's a lot of confusion up in the air right now in regards to how rewards from staking are handled and such. With non-custodial staking, there's an argument, or custodial staking rather, there's an argument that since the node runner service itself is in full control and wholly domain controlled of the wallet during the staking period, that this doesn't count as rewards coming in as a taxable event to your personal wallet as per the IRS guidelines. Mind you, I am not a CPA. I'm just talking about general chatter here and in regards to that. And so there's some questions I think about, is that going to change whether or not that's considered, a taxable event as rewards are coming in? The bigger answer to that, of course, is we'll see when some of these court cases are resolved and the IRS officially issues some regulatory guidance. But in the meantime, I think it's a question worth discussing and maybe adding comments to in the proposal itself on how that changes the custody of rewards as they're generated. Anyone have thoughts or input on that particular change? Yes, no?
When do we vote on this?
Oh, that's a great question. When is this going to go up for snapshot? Usually it's about a week to 10 days, I think, depending on the conversation around a proposal. Sometimes it goes a little longer if there's a long conversation.
Hey, this is Shane here. I finally got it all working. My mic wise. You can basically expect essentially the proposal to be up for about a week, and then it goes to a vote, and then that voting period is typically about a week as well. So I would say, we can look at it for probably about a week and a half. I don't know if the holidays will be away, but this is pretty important for us.
Cool. And I very much encourage, I mean, if you're in the node runner community and you're not paying attention to proposals on the discourse, I mean, you're really missing out on important advanced information on what's going on with the product that you're running on. So if you haven't been in the habit of checking the discourse regularly, the governance category in particular, get on it. That's a super, super important thing to review. Other questions about custodial versus non-custodial staking? Going once, going twice. Someone's baby is on an unmuted mic.
Meine, ja, aber Shell cut off.
Oh, yeah, that would be you, Debra. You get to be the first person that I mute today. Excellent. And you should, I think I'll have to unmute you since I did it. So maybe shoot me a message on Discord or something when you're ready to ask another question. All right, so some other good stuff in here as well. Removal of force unstake burn. I don't know if everyone was in the Discord when the most recent example of this happened. But there have been a couple of things where if you met some criteria which you could meet accidentally, for example, dropping below the 15K stake requirement, and then I think somebody else actually timed out in jailing too, exceeded 37,690 blocks while in a jailed state on a node that they had set up right back at the very beginning of mainnet and then promptly forgot about. So the second part of PIP-9 asks to remove the force unstake burn for falling below the minimum stake due to slashing. It was pretty aggressive for people who, maybe had only staked just over 15,000 pocket, dropping to that 14.999 whatever, would essentially burn your entire stake. And the proposal writer here, Andrew, and I'm assuming everyone that he's talked to, all agree that seems like an awfully harsh punishment for just kind of screwing up a little bit. So I think there's going to be broad support for removal of that penalty as well. The third addition in the consensus rule change is the non-deterministic invalid evidence fix. The evidence handling protocol in Tendermint is non-deterministic and occasionally causes invalid proposals. Historically, this symptom has caused blocks tens of minutes late. Essentially, these are consensus jams where there's not a clear answer on consensus and it ends up taking longer to resolve that and come to agreement. Do one of y'all fine pocket engineer folks want to talk a little bit about what that means and what this fix is?
So Andrew, who's not online right now, is probably the best individual to speak about it because he implemented it. So take everything I say on his behalf with a grain of salt.
Absolutely.
But the problem was, since Pocket was originally, Pocket, the 0th version of Pocket was built on top of Tendermint. There were some bugs in the original Tendermint code, which were fixed later after Pocket forked it. And ultimately, in a short way of summarizing it, there was a race condition between how evidence is being included in the proposal alongside any new transactions. And all this fix is it basically double checks that we don't have faulty evidence when we're proposing a new block. And this was essentially a fix that we pulled in from Tendermint that came in after the fork.
Okay.
So that's kind of the high level idea, but Andrew is probably the best person to speak to it.
Well, that's that's not a bad start to the conversation. I've seen we've gone in rounds of conversation about this, and obviously there's broad understanding that Tendermint was never intended to be a consensus mechanism for thousands and thousands of nodes, which is part of why the whole service and validator split that was passed, I think it was PIP-7 or whatever. Is there a longer term plan to replace Tendermint entirely as the consensus mechanism?
Yeah, that was actually talked about in a community call, I'd say around August, where they, the tech kind of gave us their vision of what Pocket 1.0 would be. And that's what is planning on being released next year. And they're working on it right now. And that would get us completely off of Tendermint. So we would actually be using our own, basically building our own kind of more modular style where we have consensus, storage, and a bunch of different modules that all kind of work together. But ultimately, that will be next year, where we will be off of Tendermint because it's just not tenable to try to use Tendermint in the way that Pocket is wanting to be used. So it does make sense. We have to completely abandon it, which is what the plan is for next year.
Beautiful. So the goal then is to have a self-constructed consensus mechanism that's built around how Pocket is built.
Yeah, and we'll definitely be sharing more information about that in the future. So kind of stay tuned for that. But so far, it's just worth noting that this bug didn't actually have any consequences, but it did fix non-deterministic evidence fixes. But regarding future consensus changes, we'll definitely share that with the community as new ideas arise.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
So the and in the governance category in general, everyone should know at this point that the service and validator split has occurred and is rolled out to the vast majority of the network. But if you're not currently running a 07x version of Pocket, you need to get updated like yesterday. Because this will begin to cause some hashing errors in relation to the different codecs being used between those two. So I'm going to keep hammering this point. If you are on a less than 07x implementation of Pocket, please upgrade like yesterday. There's one other governance topic that I wanted to talk about, which was the increased session node count to 24, also proposed by Andrew a couple days ago. That is PUP-10. Essentially, this is one of the two changes that Andrew talked about in a previous office hours setup, which will increase the, make sure I try and say this as accurately as possible in my non-engineering perspective, increase the starting pool of nodes where relays begin from 5 to 24. And the expectation is that this is going to help generate more equity in relay participants across the network. Is that a Daniel? Can you speak to that a little bit?
So what it does is, first, yeah, instead of 5 nodes per session, we'll now have 24 nodes per session. The big reason for doing this is it'll reduce the block size and the blockchain bloat. So kind of the amount of storage you'll need in your nodes, as that's growing, it'll kind of diminish the growth rate. The other thing that it does is definitely instead of 5 nodes, you'll have 24 nodes that are servicing relays.
I'm ready.
So it'll definitely distribute the rewards more evenly. And then with the new cherry picker that Nacho Node's implemented, that'll also pick the best. That'll kind of introduce a new change. It'll pick the best servicers as they're serving relays.
Beautiful. And one of the things between the combination of those two events, the cherry picker update and the 5 to 24 node increase, the expectation is that this will be, it will likely result in slightly lower per session rewards, but more consistently across more nodes in the network. Is that a good explanation of that?
Yeah, I would say that's a good summary.
Okay. We often laugh about the pseudo random, and Lord knows we've had hours and hours of conversations in Telegram trying to plot various mathematical analysis of how and what things affect rewards distribution. So I think spreading that out a little bit across will be a welcome improvement by all. And those were the major governance topics that we wanted to cover. So at this point, given that we don't have a featured topic this week, we can open it up to QA from the community. So any topic, fair game, bring it up and we'll chew on it.
And just a note for our Twitter Spaces listeners right now, this is cross-platform, at least through all of our tests. So you should actually be able to speak as well. So just do the regular request, and we can bring you up and allow it to kind of be a crossway between the public space, which is Twitter, and then the Discord channel itself.
Beautiful. All right. So questions this week. I know you got them.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I've got a question. Sorry, my name's Alexis. I think I chatted with you earlier. Just a question. Is there anything in the roadmap on the Pocket staking side for something like Lido for liquidity for staked assets on the Pocket network?
So you're talking about like collateralizing staking in order to take like loans against it, for instance?
Well, yeah, essentially just opening up that liquidity. So after you've staked your liquidity, I think they generate like a synthetic asset against that staked liquidity, if I'm not mistaken, which then essentially just makes the capital efficiency of your staking a lot higher, and you can then go use it in an ecosystem somewhere. I think it's probably a little bit early, but I just want to know if anybody's thinking about that.
Well, I mean, to answer your question, I've been thinking about it because I've been looking at options like that myself. I think that those are great ideas and should be well supported in the community. I don't think that that's going to fall within the scope of the mission of Pocket Network itself, though. So, is anybody out there in the community who's on this call right now looking at something like that, providing that as a service or building a platform around that?
I think one of the notable differences between Pocket and other services is when you stake, you have to tie that directly to a node for the most part to generate reward. Um, there might be a way to do it with wrapped Pocket, so you could stake in one of the pools and generate some passive rewards that way. So, I mean, there could be a potential to do that on the kind of wrap Pocket side. On the normal Pocket kind of traditional staking side, it does require a node because there is no arbitrary staking outside of running actual nodes. But yeah, that could be a possibility. It would be coming from a third party, so that's why if anyone on the call here, if that's your interest, that makes a lot of sense as a possible project that could be built on the Pocket ecosystem.
100%. And for everyone, especially if you're fairly new to the community, these kinds of tools and platforms and a lot of the supporting tooling that you see around Pocket, like Pocket Scan, for instance, and various other applications that we use, are generally built by the community itself. So, I mean, if you have an interest in building this kind of a service or platform, by all means, jump into the Telegram, jump into the Discord, join the community, join the DAO, and get to building. I mean, we'll certainly support stuff like that. But in returning back to the specifics of that question, I think from an engineering side, if we look at the liquidity lock mechanism that is being implemented in the bridge for WPocket, that exact kind of mechanism could be used for liquidity providing, using a synthetic token the way that A was describing. So like the mechanics of that, I don't think are out of the pale and are actually probably going to be in demonstrable use when the bridge is live. So that might be something to look at.
So I actually have two ideas related to this. I'll start with the wrap Pocket side. If we're able to integrate wrap Pocket into Compound or Aave, anyone would be able to take wrap Pocket and lend it out to potential borrowers. So a user journey could look like someone from the community deposits wrap Pocket into Aave, and someone borrows that wrap Pocket and then bridges it over through the bridge and stakes it to become a node runner. I also thought the idea of collateralizing an existing stake from the node runner side is pretty interesting. This gets murky with like what's an option and other things, but like someone could definitely like leverage NFTs to essentially like represent that bond and the future earnings of that stake. And then like using that as collateral to borrow. But yeah, the world's our oyster. There's so much like tools out there that people can leverage to build these like secondary services.
Fantastic. Anybody else got ideas down along that line? Okay. Well, so moving on, it looks like there's some good opportunities there. Anybody who's interested, and especially if you have a background in strong financials, sounds like there's an opportunity there for people who are super interested to start multiplying that out in various ways. I know that the fractional staking pool that Joey started was a good example of someone just in the community who saw a need, who stepped up, and now it's a popular way for people with less than a full stake to get jumped in and start earning rewards. But the Pocket community, the DAO is you. So if you see a need and you've got the ability to fill it, jump on in and make it known to the community, and we'll support it.
I was just going to mention one thing. Can you hear me? I'm trying to get my
Yep,
microphone
I can
working.
hear you.
Hello. So the Alchemist team behind the Copper launch tool also offer a Crucible tool, which is for locking away liquidity tokens. So you would make, for example, a wrapped pocket F liquidity pair and then stake that into a Crucible. So the Alchemist team might be worth talking to for offering rewards for offering liquidity.
Oh, good call there too. Beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
Next question.
Poctopus, if I could add something.
Mhm.
I think maybe not day one, but day two, there are going to be many LP pools, and we definitely realize and expect it to happen with Wrapped Pocket. I don't know if it will be Crucible or through any other popular ones. I believe the Pocket team's going to be pretty arm's length distance. They're just focusing on making sure that the bridge works and that the utility of Pocket is or Poct is in state. And so we want to make sure that the utility of it is there. But as far as anything that happens on Wrapped Pocket, the world is your oyster. If you want to go to other teams or provide that liquidity to other LP pools, create an LP pool pair or anything like that. So may not be day one, but I imagine in the first weeks there will be some option like that. But I think the Pocket team is pretty focused on just executing on making sure the actual product is going well, and mainly in Poct token, not necessarily Wrapped Poct.
Yeah, we see a lot of conversation. Of course, anyone who's jumped into the Telegram official channel and asked questions about trading and financials and all the rest of that, will notice that we quickly deflect you away from that. Pocket Network's core job is the product. The entire ecosystem around the product, including the financial aspects. That's all on us. How we decide to use this product to build up other types of products, derivative products, supporting platforms, cross-platform trading, everything else. That's on us in the community. So if you see an opportunity, go for it. Next question. And by the way, this is open topic. So, if you want to ask questions about node running and all the deep tech stuff, that's absolutely welcome as well.
I had a question about choosing a location for your nodes.
Mm-hmm.
So on the documentation, there's a page about maximizing rewards, which is really interesting. And on there, it mentions the 5 locations for the Pocket portals. I was wondering whether there's any others. I saw a note in the Discord about one in Seoul. I don't know if that has been created yet, or whether that list of 5 is 6, or whether there's any others I'm not aware about.
Good question. And since Andrew's not on, Rich or Daniel, y'all want to take that? Or Shane, maybe?
Is this for backup infrastructure, or just individual node runners who've been spinning them up, or I guess what's the purview of the new locations?
So I've been interested in setting up some nodes for service nodes and trying to identify the best location for that across the world. So and what I've been trying to look at is whether to get them close to the Pocket portals that are there. So there are 5 Pocket portals listed on the page on the documentation, which talks about maximizing rewards. So I've been looking at the viability of parking my nodes as close as possible to one of these 5 portals. So I suppose that's the first assumption that I think makes sense, but that might not make sense at all. But my understanding is that list of, I saw a note on one of the Discords, just a single comment about adding a new portal. And I just
Yeah,
wondered whether
that
that was
makes
the case.
complete sense. I'm just slow on the uptake, so my apologies. If it's regarding the portal, I believe they're going to be moving to 15. I think that information will be going to public to everyone. So when it's available, everyone will be hearing about it. I do think there's like Seoul, Frankfurt, but I can't give the comprehensive list. I can prod the team to do so if that's available, but yeah, if it's not public already, I'm sure there's a good reason, but I believe the portal will be going from 5 to 15. And if that makes sense as a strategy for you to be right next to them, then I imagine you'll find out the same time that everyone else does.
Yeah, we are currently testing on the several new regions. Frankfurt at this very same moment. We're trying to do some health check, making sure everything's up fine. So, once they're up, you can expect some information from us quite soon. So don't worry there. We're gonna definitely let you know all the regions that are going up, including Frankfurt and some others.
Beautiful. Yeah, I was hearing some performance issues in the Central Europe area, so I'm sure that they'll be interested to hear that too. I guess there's a provider out there, Heitzberg or something like that, that is node running, and it's been hit or miss, I guess is the best way to say. Cool. Okay. Well, good to know. And I assume that the whole strategy of trying to get closest to one of those portals is in reducing, speed of light time in those connections. Is there, I mean, and obviously everyone's got to run to the best of their own strategy, and some of these things are just really hard to tell, but from an engineering perspective, is there enough of a notable difference in relative latency by, trying to locate close to one of these portal locations, to make it worth the while?
Yeah, of course. For example, one of the engineering implementations of the portal is that each region have their own Redis instance, which we use to run the cherry picker and all the calculations. So, for example, if I got on this new region of Frankfurt, if you were to have some nodes spinning up there, the cherry picker will obviously get your nodes at the top because they're going to be the closest to the Frankfurt region, and therefore, every time a user tries to make a relay there, as you're grabbing the closest ones, they're gonna have the best latency, best speed by that same sense.
Perfect.
That's a great explanation, Ronnie. There's also some caveats though, especially with a new cherry picker distribution. Minor differences in latency won't make that much difference. So I've timed the latency between nodes in the Netherlands, Amsterdam, and our new region that's coming up in Frankfurt, and the latency round trip is somewhere between like 8 and 15 milliseconds. That sort of millisecond difference is not going to make a difference in the cherry picker. You can beat that difference by having better networking or having more resources on your nodes. Like that sort of difference is not a tangible difference. So if you're reasonably close, you're going to be performing well. Like we don't want all the node runners to only be in Frankfurt, and that's the cherry picker sort of influences that, right? Like if you're in Amsterdam, you're fine. If you're in UK, you're going to get great response from Frankfurt. There's a geo zone around an API point that gives top service that you get put into that top bucket of the cherry picker.
Perfection. I think it's good to know. There's definitely been a race, I think, for a lot of us, and honestly, until Nacho looked at my stats the first time, I didn't even realize how bad my latency was on our bare metal box when we first started. But knowing that the goal is teens or lower always on relative latency, I think there's been a lot of move to optimize those connections and figure out what the best possible strategy is to get those connections when you're building.
What's super exciting is I've been running load and speed tests between us and different providers. I actually paid for Infura and Anchor plans so I could get off their free tier, and we're getting very comparable. And I think these new changes that we're rolling out this week, we're going to get even closer. And by comparable, I mean to the point where I'm showing it now to prospective clients and chains coming on and saying like, it's almost negligible, the difference. So as we get more API regions that come up and more nodes that start hosting around those regions, it's going to get even closer and closer. So this latency bias that people have always had toward the centralized services, which is rightfully so. Like if you want fast service on your app, you want the lowest latency. It's quickly going away in Pocket's favor. So like with Tony Kim hosting an Asian pool, I know other providers have spun up a few hundred in racks in Asia. Like we're going to start getting better geolocation just based on the fact that sessions have 24 nodes in them. And as you spin up a session and say you're in Asia, you now have a choice of 24 nodes from the cherry picker. The cherry picker is definitely going to get some other Asian nodes around you, and you're going to get very quick latency response. So when we have nodes hosted nearby the Singapore API, we're seeing sub 100 millisecond latencies on quick calls. That's nearly Infura level. Like there's almost no difference, between choosing Pocket and Infura at that point.
So, question in regard to that specifically. One of the things that that I've heard.
You want to flirt?
Yeah.
Who is that? Jesus Christ! Somebody's about to get server muted.
Yeah.
Let me find your lit up screen.
I got him.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We've had a lot of questions, especially from the Asian markets. Generally, if I'm on Twitter after midnight, I start getting inundated with a lot of requests for information from that side of the planet. And some of the information that they've sent over, the big demand, it seems like, is mostly for financial type applications, and they're very interested in using Pocket as a backend infrastructure for some of their trading applications. But of course, with traders, speed is life. Who the hell? Bounce them right off the server. And so in comparisons of transaction times, they were showing me tests where a financial trading relay would take around, say, 200 milliseconds on QuickNode versus around 2000 milliseconds using one of the Pocket RPC test endpoints. Is there a solution to that? Is the increase of nodes in the Asian region the solution to that, or what should we tell these folks who are wanting to come online? Did we lose them? Nacho? Well,
Yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm sitting there talking on mute. Yeah, that was good. So let me try and backtrack to where I was. So that probably has to do mostly with our cold start issue. And that cold start issue is basically the cherry picker sorting the nodes into buckets. So when you first hit an endpoint, it has to sort through your nodes and determine who's nearby you. So our engineers are working in the background on ways to get around this cold start issue so that it simply doesn't exist in our API. But for now, you basically have to warm up the endpoint a bit. You don't see this in production, of course, because the endpoint just stays warm. But this is a big issue we have with, just like you said, people testing us out once or twice. They see the cold start issue. It's very slow initially. It's disappointing to us as it is to them. And they don't come back and they don't try it again. So this is a very high on our priority list to fix the cold start issue. So that's probably a lot of what he was seeing. If the endpoint actually warmed up, we would get much closer to that. But yes, we definitely still have a problem in Asia that with, probably 95% of our nodes are not in APAC. When you only get 5 nodes a session, you're probably not going to get an APAC node. So that will improve greatly with the 24. That will improve greatly with more people spinning up in Asia. And again, the cold start issue is a difficult one to work around. But if that's something that, you can explain to them that, hey, it needs to warm up a bit, that could be helpful while we're working on that.
Beautiful. Well, I think that one of the parts of that equation is that, QuickNodes has set up this compare us to other nodes testing mechanism. And I'm guessing or pretty confident really that they're just doing a fast test against a single relay and then caching that value. They're not actually doing real-time testing of those relative relay speeds. Is there a possibility, or does somebody have on their roadmap having a comparison relay testing tool provided by Pocket specifically?
Well, I have something set up with K6. K6 is a pretty standard load and speed testing tool. QuickNode has different plans. QuickNode has an API plan, which is more like Infura or Anchor, and they also have a dedicated node service, QuickNode. So when you talk about QuickNode, it matters like who you're comparing to, right? So if you're paying for a dedicated node, that's really how you want to go if you're trading financially on it. And like you said, Pocket just may not be a great fit for trading. Like there's a point where we have a market fit, and because we will always have added speed of light latency, we may not be the best market fit for them. But there is still plenty of market to go around.
Beautiful, fantastic answer. Next question. Hamza, is that you? Oh, maybe not. Okay. While Hamza figures it out, anybody else have a question?
I can have a follow-up question on the locations thing, if that's. What I'm not sure of is how many requests are coming out from each portal. So we've got loads of nodes set up in the US and in Germany, and not many in Asia. And I'm not sure whether that is. And there's a note on the documentation that says that Asia is underserved, but I'm not sure if there's a way to kind of measure how much it is underserved. So, for example, can we count how many queries are coming out of the portals in the US and how many nodes there are to respond to them, versus how many queries are coming out of the Asian portals and how many nodes there are to respond to them?
Sure. So we at the foundation don't actually track node locations. Like that's part of our decentralized network. Like wherever you're spinning up, and we're going to do our best to serve the customers wherever our nodes are spinning up, and we'll crypto economically incentivize people to spin up in the locations that we need them. We definitely do track the traffic levels of our various regions, but we don't record user data. So being that we don't record the end user's IP in any of our logs or any of our data, we can't actually geolocate where the users are. So that does give us a bit of a blind spot as far as determining traffic location. Like we can see which regions are doing the most traffic, but we don't actually see within that region where the users are. And that's something we could do if we enabled more detailed user logging and ran some metrics to see. But we'd rather just raise all the regions we can. So we can see, and it actually changes over time and changes quite interestingly over time. That when we first booted up mainnet, there was no APAC traffic. Like Singapore was the second region that I brought up, and it brought almost no traffic, which would surprise me because I was like I know Asians love Ethereum, like they this is big into many of the financial products, DeFi. So where is the traffic? Well, it just changed over time. Like there just weren't any apps using us at that time, hitting APAC and hitting the Singapore API. So that's obviously changed now. There's tons of traffic on Singapore, but we don't know where that traffic's going to geolocate in the next week. We're going to open up Seoul, Hong Kong, and possibly one more in APAC. So where's the traffic going to go from AP Southeast 1? We're not quite sure yet. So that's going to be interesting to see. So yes, we do know the various traffic levels of our current regions. We don't track enough user info to geolocate where they're going to be. We'd rather just raise all the nodes we can. Sorry, raise all the API regions we can.
Thanks a lot.
Beautiful. And this is another one of those cases. I mean, over the last 4 or 5 weeks or so, one of the things that I've been most impressed about in the community is that we have a ton of super smart analyst types out there who are digging into stuff that I've never even thought about. I think Lex, created the graphic of how many wallets exist for Pocket with more than one with more than one pocket in them. Things like that are useful data, that are interesting metrics and stuff that influence your strategies. if you are working on something like that and you need a little help or support, or maybe, some guidance on where to get some data or how to compile some data or things along that line, reach out, bring those conversations into Discord, bring them into the Telegram. There are a number of people who are all trying to get their handle around, okay, how does the network perform? Where's the network perform? Where's the need? And we've been working with some limited tooling. I mean, Coder has probably one of the earliest and most comprehensive sort of general high level dashboards out there, which, I'm sure drove a lot of traffic towards their website, uh, because they were answering some of these questions, like where are there a lot of nodes and where are there not a lot of nodes, and what's happening with staked versus unstaked. I reference those charts frequently in my own blog. So if you've got the ability to create that kind of data and you're just not sure how to get access to some of the source or something, but you want to do some deeper analysis, by all means, please reach out on Telegram or Discord, because we'll give you all the support you need. Next question. I need that Jeopardy music while we're waiting for questions to queue up. In the meantime, I do want to give a shout out to our unofficial Telegram community. We broke 1,000 members last night, which was pretty darn awesome. It was a gift flood for a good hour or so from midnight to 1 a.m. And we threw around a little free pocket in there after the fact. So if you're not in the Poctopus Den Telegram channel, that is where we talk about a lot of topics that you're normally not allowed to in some of the other more official channels. So feel free to come hang with us and get up into the meme lord edginess, along with a bunch of nerds who run bare metal nodes and cloud nodes and all the rest of that, and have a really great sense of what it's like to be a node runner. So if you're dabbling or dipping your toes in, that's definitely the place to be. Getting close to the bottom of the hour here, so if you got your questions, get them in quick. There it is. That's what I was looking for. Was that you, Ian? All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions this week, then y'all know how to find us. And I do want to give a big shout out to thanks to Shane and Alberto for helping get our Twitter Spaces set up this week. And also apparently getting recording set up so we can start sharing these sessions out after the fact. Sometimes they're a little shorter, sometimes they're a little bit longer, but I think there's always a ton of value, especially when we have featured guests dropping the knowledge bombs of senior engineers to those of us who are still noobs to the space. So before I call it, I'm going to put a last call out there. Any questions, any types, hardware, software, cloud, bare metal, the market at large, the future of crypto, Web3?
Hey, Jinx, I wanna ask a question.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm Tony, and I mean, as everybody is aware that after this 0.7 version, there will be 1,000 validator, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard was that if the stake is bigger, then it has a higher chance of getting the block reward.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to Pocket Scan, the top 100, most of them are Pocket Network, like 18 million coins staked, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So that means that huge chunk of Pocket token staked still have a very, very large chance of getting the block compared to 15K nodes.
Absolutely. Would you like a greater explanation of that? Is that the question?
The question is, so that means there's no point of people staking higher. I mean, we want people to compete each other, right? But right now we have to compete with the team. So does team have any way of doing something else? I mean, reducing the stake or allowing other nodes to get the block reward?
Well, first of all, let's talk about that a little bit. And I see that Coder's on the call here, Balut. And he wrote up and distributed a pretty good explainer about that recently. The thing to keep in mind is this: validators versus servicers is like practically a distraction when it comes to earning rewards on the servicer on the Pocket network, right? And to as an example of that, in one of the 100 node clusters that I have access to, right, in service rewards over the last like couple of weeks or so, it was about 148K Pocket or so, right? In producer rewards, it was a little over 2K Pocket. We're talking about essentially a 1% and change bonus in being a block producer. So if it's worth it to you to compete in what will always be a run up to see who can stake more to be in the top 1,000 nodes on the network to earn an additional 1% of rewards, then by all means, go ahead. To me, it makes a lot more sense to expand horizontally and use that pocket to stake servicer nodes, because those are really where the vast majority of rewards come from. So, I don't think that asking the PNF team to reduce their stakes on what are, pretty definitive sources of truth on the network being maintained by people whose job is to protect the network and secure it, I don't think that's the right strategy at all. And if you want to play in the bigger node stakes in order to eke out that little extra 1% reward, feel free. But the benefit to the network of having a limited set of validators is that you get much smaller block sizes that come to consensus much faster. And the benefit to all of the servicers on the network from that change is fairly significant. Go servicers, expand horizontally. That's really the play to make.
Well, and you could also look at it as a positive, because the more pocket that is being staked in large chunks to be a validator, that's less pocket that's being used to create more servicers, which more servicers is going to mean less rewards for each individual nodes, because there's more nodes to be put into sessions. So, at the end of the day, if you really want to maximize your rewards, because at least with because it is so small of a reward to be a block producer, it is way more rewards to just scale on the servicer side. And the more block that or the more pocket that you see that's locked up to be a validator, that's ultimately less nodes that are going to be competing for your rewards. So it could actually be seen as a positive thing if there are large amounts being staked, which ultimately the whole point of just being a block producer is simply to keep the blockchain moving, right? But the actual work that's happening on the network itself is done by all the servicers, which are why they get the huge line share of the reward, and the block producers just get a little bit. And there'll be games to figure out exactly how much should be staked in order to still generate good rewards without wasting pocket. But ultimately, if you see 18 million or however much staked for a validator, that just means less pocket is being used to create more service nodes, which is good for service nodes, because then they'll be able to maximize their rewards by there being less service nodes on the network.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things. I think that a lot of folks forget the mechanics of how rewards are minted and divided, right? In every reward that's issued in a session, you've got 1% going to the block producer, 10% going to the DAO, and 89% going to the servicers. That 89% is where the vast majority of us are targeting. But if you've got a bunch of pocket and you want to compete for that extra 1% on top of it, then by all means, I encourage you to do so. My goal is to see that coder chart of staked versus unstaked flip in the next couple of months. So please stake lots and lots and lots against all of your nodes. Does that answer the question okay?
Yep.
Beautiful.
That's a good answer. Yeah, but
any
of
other?
course, I mean,
Oh, sorry.
I was concerned about. I mean, let's say the number of relays goes up, at 1% will be bigger, because when we have more service nodes, it's gonna be the number of pocket rewards per service node will reduce, right? But that 1% might become a very big number later on. I mean, not now. When we reach, let's say, 20 billion relays. That 1% will be a very, very big number. So that was, I mean, I'm imagining something that might happen a few years later. So
absolutely. And I know that there are some folks on here who are like really, really solid spreadsheet analysts. I mean, Schmatix is on here. He's a spreadsheet king. Tracy in the community is another one, you know, and who run that kind of math and pay attention to that sort of stuff all the time. Joey is probably sick of spreadsheets at this point, but also very good at it. You know, watch that stuff, model it. This is an opportunity for you to figure out where a market opportunity exists. And if you see that you know, in your projections, it's enough worthwhile to compete for one of those top 1,000 spots, then I absolutely encourage you to go for it. I would just say that for the average node runner, your time's going to be better spent expanding out across that 89% portion of the rewards.
What other,
yes,
you know,
very
too,
true.
real quick is that you know, this whole 1,000 validators, this is only temporary, because again, once we hit Pocket 1.0 and we no longer have Tendermint bogging us down and limiting the amount of validators that we can have on the network, we plan to have more similar to what we have currently, in terms of, you know, every node can also participate in validation. So well, there will be other. I believe there's going to be, you know, differences, but what I'm ultimately saying is, you know, what we have right now is not what's going to be in a few years, because Pocket 1.0 is going to be changing that dramatically, from my understanding, and you know, the spec will be coming out here shortly and things like that. It's all going to be communicated to the community, but what we're doing right now is truly seen as temporary, simply because of the Tendermint limitations. So when we're hitting, you know, 30 billion relays in a few years, yeah, we're going to be on under a completely different node structure, because we're not going to be bound to Tendermint.
Well, important consideration there as well. We are getting up on the top of the hour now, so I do want to thank everybody for joining us as always, and make sure to be there again next week.